Welcome to Print Your Games, podcast about what's new and awesome in 3D printing for gaming. I'm one of your hosts, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param. I'm joined by
Kristen Sowards, also known as Seventh Mastery.
Oh, Kristen. I don't think that I'm ever going to have to stop batch printing hundreds of minis for OPR. At least not during con season.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
I mean, it is only because like I want to print. Like it's like my printer is now tied up doing OPR stuff, and it's like, but want new Fancy Dragon.
That sounds like get another printer problem.
I'm waiting on it. I ordered the Saturn 4.
So what's the problem? You just got to be a little patient, right? 2
months for the Saturn 4 to come out.
Well, you know, then talk to Big Boss Man and get Saturn 3 whatever in the meantime.
Maybe this might be something to consider for sure. Actually,
I mean, you click the magic like Amazon button,
and
it'll be here tomorrow. Well, for you, maybe a couple days.
But this is it's like giveaway minis and stuff I need, like, because it's just easier for me to handle it here than it is to get a print house to do it for us. And giveaway minis and like printing up the demo armies, because I'm going to go to UKGE and I'm super hyped about going to UKGE. That's gonna be fun. And I'm wanting to so I'm printing up we got a whole bunch of demo tables, and I'm getting to run a tournament of one-page rules, and like it's gonna be so cool seeing a tournament for one-page rules in person, like 40 some people playing the game. And
I get excited locally because there's a couple stores where they play it right enough that there's like 3 or 4 games simultaneously, and there's like actual like comparative discussion of some of the armies, and that makes me excited. But I've never seen a tournament yet.
Put me in contact with whoever's doing that. Never mind. We'll talk about this other. That's work stuff. That's work stuff.
It's work stuff.
Yeah. But I like little groups. I like this. Honestly, at this point, it's feeling like those early Pathfinder days when the Pathfinder fans could all fit in one room, and like every Pathfinder fan on the planet could fit in one room. And
well, I loved it, like, cause you go those early PaizoCons, and it would be all the diehards from across the country would be there, and then we'd go back out, and like for a while, like organized play and even home games seemed to just like have like a vibe for like a year, and I kind of feel like OPR is kind of at that point right now. And you know, it's not alone. There's all these other creators that are kind of getting in on that, and I've had yes, it's close up, Kristen. Yes, I'm in my streaming setup that I normally use for my Magic the Gathering stuff. So, I don't know.
The cool corner bookcase
background. Yes, I do. I got my Planescape stuff, and my 5e books are kind of over here. You can't quite see them because
that's my favorite nerd stream setup. Like cool corner shot of bookshelves with nerdy, like the nerdiest crap you can think of behind them, and like I was spot the nerdy stuff in the background.
There's a LED potion bottle too that I'm quite fond of that like shifts its colors and stuff.
Is that a OG Dark Sun box set?
Yes, it is, sir.
Yes.
You want to even know what's funnier than that?
What?
That is my second one.
Oh,
because my first one.
Is this the glue incident?
No, these are just okay. So I have mentioned that a well-meaning family member, helped me move this stuff early, while the shelves were still drying. So several of these box sets are very intimate with the shelving. I have managed to get most of them gently pulled away, but there's been a little more wear than needed to be there on several of them, because they were facilitated getting in place a little faster while I was at work one day, which was not required, but it happened. So that's a thing. But because several of these box sets are damaged, but they're also all worn anyway, because if you can't tell, like those puppies have been played.
Yes.
My pride and joy is the Planescape box sets that are still in pretty good shape, even despite much use. You can see like where they're faded on the edges and stuff. But the fact that I have 2 of the main box set, I'm jealous. Some people are pretty jealous of that. But
I got the book. I got the book version of that box set.
Gives a new meaning to Second Breakfast and 11Zs.
Yes.
Yes. Candlemas of Cathlings times Lord of the Rings. I love it. Yes, that would be these right here. The we got the Dark Sun stuff. It's interesting what ended up in this shot because you also can see some Starfinder there and Red Steel. If if you haven't heard me go off about my Ixalan tinfoil hat theory about Mystara, that's all connected to that stuff up there.
Nice.
And a bunch of old Forgotten Realms box sets. You can probably see City of Splendors and the Haurua stuff. But yeah.
Very cool. I think we tangent. Oh, I got the book. Just I needed to. I had a legitimate work reason to find out how quickly one bookshelf could print and deliver a book. So I went and picked any book, and thanks to your malign influence, I was able to. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get the OG Planescape box set or the Planescape book. And so they made it into a book format instead of
which is lovely from what I've seen. It still looks really nice, and
it looks and reads wonderfully. It's a big old chunker. I didn't expect it to be so thick. But like you get to certain sections and it's just like, this is the corner of a map. This is the next page is the other corner of that map. And it's just like, oh, this I'm glad it's here, but it's not usable in this format.
Right. Yeah. Although it's still, a lot of information that's not in the new box set, which I will say the new box set, I'm not going to harsh too much, is a little better than the Spelljammer box set. The Spelljammer box set, if you haven't heard, notoriously is a lot of fluff and a little problem. And otherwise, worth the value if you like all of it. But otherwise, it was a little sparse.
I noticed that it was being discounted at my local Walmart, which is not something I expect to see of a D&D book.
Ironically, like it's the weirder like fringy books that are turning out to be the better ones, like that book of many things, which is the deck of many things same thing, which clearly owes some things to Crystal and the Harrowing books, but still much more interesting product, I think, than some of these flagship things you think were going to be like your heavy hitters, right? But yeah, I definitely am very excited that I still have access to this stuff, and I'm very excited that you got to get access to it through that, I guess, POD service, technically.
I kind of dig it. Like, I'm glad. Originally, Wizards did that when they first, when Wizards was still Wizards before it was Hasbro. They put a lot of their classic books on drive-through, and I was just like, "This is awesome!" You get to just like, I was poor when this was new, and also I was growing up in the Bible Belt, so like the Satanic Panic was like in full effect still. So I wasn't able to get some of this stuff when it was like OG going around. Right. And so I got to like, while I was like in my college phase of really ramping up my nerdity and love of RPGs, I was able to access all this history and this wealth of publishing for very cheap prices in PDF format. And then they just all went away when fourth edition. They all went away.
Yes, that was the thing that was very upsetting about that. Like, very few things weaponized me against my old fanboy status like that did, because that was upsetting. That felt like a declaration of war, because to just lose all the assets.
It made me very grumpy when like I went to my download page and it just wasn't there anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, and then but they came back. They came back when 5th edition came out, and I've got my downloads again. And
I believe all mine are there. I feel like something's missing, but I'm not sure. So,
and the ones that were my favorites though.
What's that?
The Volos guides. Those were always very fun. Like the OG Volos soft covers. Like Volos Guide to Waterdeep and Volos Guide to the Realm. Oh, you've got them?
Oh yeah,
you've got the actual OG softcover versions.
Every one of them.
I'm jealous. I'm really jealous of your
collection. I also have the Known World Almanac, which is also a rare one. And
very cool.
Yeah, the only thing I think I lost in the flood was the Forgotten Realms Atlas. That one got that, which makes me sad. But
yeah, the only Volos guide I have in person I got just a few years ago, and it's water damaged, and it's Volos Guide to Cormier.
Yep.
But I kind of wish other game companies with long lineages would follow suit. I'm thinking
Closest
of
out there is Cobalt
40,000
Press.
reasons that this is a good idea.
Cobalt Press is getting close, but
Oh,
TOV does seem to be a departure from that, and I don't hate it. I don't know if you've heard all. You were at most of the things like Gen Con, but I went. Oh, maybe I went to a couple more than you did this year. Where they're starting with the Void, and they're starting with kind of a planar. All the worlds exist. Have your homebrew setting. It still reaches Midgard. They're very much moving into my neighborhood, which I'm here for.
Yeah. But what I was really hoping for is more companies releasing their classic catalogs in this format.
So that's what you meant. Sorry.
Gaming history.
Gotcha.
No, I'm definitely glad that Tales of the Valiant is getting weird in wonderful multiplanar ways. And I saw your face light up when we were watching those speeches when we were at Gen Con together, for sure. That is cool. But like right now, let's say you want to like deep dive into the history of miniature gaming, which means a lot of early Warhammer stuff, especially since those early Warhammer books and Citadel stuff represents an attitude towards wargaming that the company no longer has.
How do you mean that?
So like the classic version that keeps being brought up is at one point in time, they published books like a guide to making terrain and like how to custom scratch build your terrain. Like there's a classic book that's like beloved by the community for that. And like previous editions of the game itself would be fun to have classic versions of, especially like I love watching Snip and Web. It's a YouTube channel they have a Codex Compliant series where they just like deep dive into old books from old games, a lot of GW stuff. And this is like, did you know that the Ultramarines librarian once was a half Eldar? And like all the weird, like feature lots of like really cool old stuff. And I would love to be able to like go easily and legally, pay money to go see this history of the hobby and the industry of of the most prominent players.
That's fair.
But they don't do that. If you go to Drive Through RPG, you can find lots of Warhammer stuff, but it's usually from partnered creators. Like the RPGs are there.
Right.
But there's like not a lot of places to easily and let me rephrase that. There's not a lot of places to legally get these old PDFs.
I was about to say, I might have not even tried and accidentally found several places to get them illegally, which I did not do. But it's sometimes
was a point in time with Pathfinder stuff that it was easier to find the pirated material than it was to get the official sources.
To this day, I still find people that are my stuff comes up. Like I said, it usually gets pirated within 6 hours of release.
Yeah.
And usually ends up on like an aggregate site that shows up above my publisher site in SEO searches, which is just like, okay, cool.
That is search engines broken is what that is. Now and I would love to see that. And like one of the ones I would love to get a hold of is like the original Fellowship of the Ring book, because of how important that is in the history of gaming. And because that old Lord of the Rings stuff is cool, and also because like it was a complete game in one little thin book that is like considered one of the best games GW ever made, still to this day.
How that happens.
And it would be so cool to like break that book out, get some 3D printed models or some old Citadel models, and like Lord of the Rings models are still cheap to buy, even the official ones. And like there's that old HeroClix set that you can just get for pennies for those models too. And just like get some cool Fellowship of the Ring old school mini battles go and like see what gaming was like 20 years ago and enjoy it and compare it to today. And you just can't do that for like I understand there's various reasons and cross licensing and problems like there, and the Tolkien estate is not always the easiest thing to deal with.
Segue for later maybe, but not specifically called out. Anyway, go on.
But it would be very cool to just like, and I'm glad that D&D is back in that camp, because it was really sad when because we're not even talking about like yes, people are going to play the new stuff, and the new stuff is going to sell, because like that's just, if you've been in the gaming industry long enough, you know that quote unquote dead games are hard to get games in for.
Yeah.
Even though like it actually makes very little sense that a game needs to be actively releasing product for it to be playable, but
Right.
like when you think about it on the Mac, but that's just the way it is. If a game isn't actively still releasing product, it's very hard to find players for it.
It's kind of weird because like
and it kind of ties into, I saw it once, argument about comic books like this is like nobody reads the current month's comic books. Like there's not a huge fandom for current release comic books. There's a humongous fandom for old comic books and comic books coming out 5 months from now.
Interesting. Just because people get excited about what's gonna come out.
Yeah. If you go to the discourse, everybody's talking about like previews of books coming months from now, and that's all. And like movies are almost the same way, but like when a movie initially comes out, you do see that because people do go experience the movies. But if you look at the discussions like of Reddit/comics or like any comic group, or even just to hang out with the nerds at your local comic book store, the things they're going to be geeking out about is what they saw in previews, and specifically quote unquote previews, the comic preview magazine,
the Diamond thing,
yeah, from Diamond, or on like what Marvel likes to leak out about stuff coming in. Like I'm still geeking out about X-Men stuff that's coming in like several months from now when Uncanny One's going to drop.
Rogue leading the team.
I know that's going to be so good.
Yes, although we're now having a complication with X-Men, of course, because X-Men 97 is out, and if you haven't been watching that show is freaking fire, and it is not core MCU or Marvel standard X-Men continuity. It's more the cartoon continuing, and it's not the Ultimate either, but it's nodding to both of them, and it's this whole new thing. What were you gonna say? Sorry,
I was saying that I think I'm seeing. We're going into a weird nerd territory here. That's okay. We need to circle back to our show here soon, but I'm seeing in the I think Marvel is stepping away from the MCU in a way now, because now the comic books are being across the board are willing to take chances. There's been a lot of financial failures, not financial failures, so to speak, but not humongous billion-dollar success stories in the show, in the MCU itself. And for a while now, I stopped reading Marvel comics because of how shackled and forced some of the storytelling was feeling to comply to the MCU, or to just be used as, we're going to change every single thing up every couple of years to kind of like generate fodder and ideas that might be used in an MCU movie.
Sure.
And then I've talked to authors that wrote for Marvel that told me, yes, that's exactly what was going on.
It was interesting though, because they did do a lot of French stuff, and like the Frenchy stuff was usually pretty out there. Like, there was an X-Men team, a new X-Men kid team that turned out to not even be mutants, and like they were just basically like cosplaying fanboys and fangirls that had tech from a crashed spaceship, and they used it to fake being mutants. And then one of them turned out to actually be a mutant, and like it created this big divide of the team and a lot of drama because the reality versus the art imitating, and it was really neat. But yeah, you're right, we're kind of down a rabbit hole. We should probably stop. Anyway,
yeah. So back to the Tolkien estate.
I mean, what?
So some weird random. So this is
completely unrelated to anything we just talked about.
It's not unusual for us to come and say like, somebody got a cease and desist, and big creator in the industry had to make some changes. But this one's is kind of came out of left field, because the group formerly known as Lord of the Print released a very sudden message that they were right dang now rebranding into Rescale Miniatures.
Right.
Which actually a fun name, a neat name for a because like rescaling is a common thing you do with 3D printing.
I guess it's still an interesting choice, and I almost wonder if it's more a nod to the fact that they always do dragons, so they rescale.
Ooh, see, it's
I
gonna
don't.
have lots of, and they use the Tarask as their logo, which comes as its own IP rabbit hole.
Right? Oh no! Oh no!
But they released quote unquote important communication, new name and logo. What we know, we do not know who or what happened exactly, but there is some fairly gigantic blinking lights in this post that give us some good clues to speculate with. And by the way, we are reaching rampant speculation zone. This is no authoritative. I do not have inside knowledge on any of this. And that's a rare thing for me these days.
It's true, but yet this somewhat seems evident.
Yeah. So they say, "Hello, everyone. This is a very important post today. We recently had an exchange that forces us to make some changes." And that's the end of the sentence on all the motivation here. They had an exchange that forces, the word forces us to make some changes. And the fact that this came out of nowhere gives me a pretty good idea of what that exchange is. I'm just making some guessing.
Whatever could it be?
But they're no longer Lord of the Print. They are now Rescale Miniatures, new logo and everything. Their new logo does not have ominous gold circle paraphernalia all over it.
What?
But interesting here, none of the content's changing. They're still releasing models. If you do not know who Rescale Miniatures is or who Lord of the Print was, if you've ever seen 3D prints at a convention, you've seen their models because they're one of the most beloved of 3D printing resellers, because they make giant pretty dragons, like really big cool dragons. They do real scale stuff, so it's like very realistic art for all their models. Just like absolutely jaw dropping detail. It's like these are some of the models you bring out when people say, well, you can't 3D print something as good as GW quality on the sculpting.
And then you say, bet, and you put that puppy down the table.
Yeah, the Arc Villain and Lord of the Print have something to say about this. And they're like, and then like also, for merchants, you must immediately stop using our logos. You must immediately start using the new logos. Like all that stuff happened all in a big curry. And if you look all across like all of everything, it very quickly occurred. They released like a new logo kit and everything for everybody. All that stuff happened. But hey, it's fun. But so there's not a whole lot to really say on this one because the obvious is the obvious. The good news is they're still around. They're still making pretty dragons. What is their this month? What is their models this month anyway? Rescale Miniatures. What are you releasing this month? You're releasing Orcs on Pigs.
Orcs on pigs.
Yep, big old orkies on pigs. And also dragons. What did I expect?
Right.
Yeah. So they're releasing Orcs on Pigs.
But is it a pig-like dragon? Is what I want to know. You should put this.
They look like they are dire pigs. I'm trying.
Dire pigs.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a good.
I'm all about pigs, but show me the dragon. That's what I really want to see. Anywho, because I'm sure it's really cool and really detailed and really, really big. I will say I have actually rescaled one of these dragons before, and I rescaled it down to be a medium-sized companion to a player, and that thing still had ludicrous amount of detail.
I printed their forest dragon, and I still had to rescale it down to fit on my Saturn. And at 50%, it was still like what would be considered gargantuan.
Well, when I say medium, it's base because it was on the little precipice. The base still was on a medium base. The dragon itself was still like kind of hanging over large. This is something I've been noticing them doing though, and I have to applaud them. If you notice, they are moving into my requested verticality on some of their minis when they're big, so that we have space underneath and around so that people can actually put stuff up against the base if there's fighting going on.
Yeah.
Because as
Yeah,
beautiful as your dragon is, if I can't use it, I don't want it.
yeah, I love their dragons, but yeah, like the forest dragon, it was the first one that they released where they reposed it. Where like the first version of it had the wings just straight out sideways
Mm-hmm.
as long as they could go, and it was like 12 inches from tip to tip,
Right.
and you couldn't play with that model at all. So they had to make a playable version of the forest dragon where he pulls the wings up and like is in standard doggy pose for dragon. And that's great. That was a good model still, so I love it. But yeah, now they're actually making playable minis. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, half the time when I print Lord of the print thing, sorry, a rescale miniatures thing, what I want out of it is a shelf piece.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see this more as a diorama sourcing thing. It is interesting though to note that like as they have got more and more, market friendly, let's say that market friendly, that their armies are starting to look more and more like I would expect them to, and less like their original vibe. Like, and that's not me harshing on them; they're much more usable.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting that they're starting to very consistently. I would say even as far back because they did the kind of like I want to say like almost like an insectoid vibe elves a while back that I really liked like a lot. But it does feel like that was kind of the turning point towards more of like a classic army vibe. What's that?
I'm wondering if like this. I wonder if we're dealing with war carsification.
War carsification.
You familiar
like this? No,
with carsification, right? That eventually, for some odd reason, everything evolves into crabs or a crab-like shape from like multiple different, completely different lines. Because evidently a crab-like shape is just a good evolutionary decision for a lot of reasons.
This is interesting. I would like to subscribe to its newsletter.
Yeah.
Quickly, Lava Being asked a question: do any modelers provide alternate bases for their large models that are more suitable for placing smaller models underneath? To my knowledge, Arc Villain Games is one of the few that has started doing this. Because they actually got a lot of feedback from people like me. So Arc Villain does have some scaled back bases now, and I'm trying to think of anybody else that you can. There are people like that always use base. Like I think OPR is one of them that always is kind of on. It's very rare that you have bases that are super out of line unless it's like your showcase piece.
Yeah, we save those for the legendary models or for reward models or like and they're usually like or the epic versions of models, which is a normal model we already released, but we want to just make a way over the top version.
Right. But other than that,
and another question there was from Troy: is pigs or rhinos? The answer is yes, pigs and rhinos. So big, gigantic dire hogs with like spikes and stuff all over them. They look really cool. And like this is definitely like the Warcraft vibe for the orcs, which is what I was hinting at with war carsification.
Got it.
And then a giant saber-toothed tiger for the chieftain lady to ride, and then like 2 dragons. I think it's actually just the same dragon twice. One dragon just on rock, being all dragon and noble and awesome and stuff, and then same dragon with orc riding it, about to eat somebody.
Yeah. And I think they've been doing these double poses a lot more frequently. But back to your war carsification thing, it's weird that we seem to be like, to as an industry survive, you need to move towards an IP. To circle like a Remora onto the underbelly of a GW or a other franchise, a movie or book franchise, right? Yet, then when you get too close to it, you are struck down. And it's just this weird place that we keep seeing creators get put in, like where they have to like evolve towards a thing, but they can't be the thing.
Right.
And
like the other option is you're forced to make your own IP, and then that's like winning the lottery situation.
Well, get your boutique situations, you know, like
I love the boutique modelers though. I don't want them to become crabs. Please do not become crabs.
Right.
Twin Goddess, do not crab. Please do not crab, Twin Goddess.
And I don't think they will, but they are also, you get into things like we talked to Scott, and he's got 4 days left in his campaign, I think, as of this, and it is substantially short of its goal. Let's just say what it is, and it's about 14K, I think, under last I checked, and love Comet Lord, and he did mention he's probably going to relaunch, and I think that's a good idea. But I guess the thing there is that these boutique creators kind of ended up a point where there a ceiling, right? Is there a thumb on the scale, as someone might say? I don't know. It feels like it's kind of a rough spot to be in that middle. Like, I'm succeeding. I've got a brand. It's really cool. But then, like, if I'm not, like, wargaming the war carsificationing, then is my potential stunted? I don't know. It's an interesting thing in the industry that seems to keep coming up, and then you get these people who get struck down when they get too close. It's like, oof, I don't like the vibe at all.
Yeah, and then I do worry about it too. You pointed out a creator we won't call out here, but like I've seen it happen a bunch of times where I'll get worried when one of my favorite creators starts to get a little too close to the sun.
Yes,
like,
someone
I love,
Icarus, I love very dearly is writing this line right now, and I'm like, oh no, we're not going to say what it is, because we hope, honestly, for my own personal greedy reasons that I will not specify, I hope nothing comes of this thing, because I want the thing that I have seen, but I'm scared. The inevitable destiny of all organics is to become a crab. Okay, well, thank you, Martian Play.
Join.
So
I have no idea what that is. I'm so sorry. I am not educated enough, it seems.
Martian, tell us what surimi is. We want to know. Or, say it, and then we'll see whether or not it's appropriate to repeat.
Yeah. So there's another path to success, and it's equally got its own perils, which is you chase the zeitgeist. Like right now we're seeing that with, like, Skullforge is doing a lot of really cool heck divers, and
heck divers.
Yeah. And basically, like, what is the cool hotness this week? And because 3D printing can iterate that quickly, they can exist in that space. Like, remember when Pondering My Orb meme was just like everywhere, and then like we got some really cool Pondering My Orb miniatures. Like, they're able to, because 3D printing is so quick, it only takes 12 hours to make a model at a professional level on average, which I say only, but like compared to like getting something produced in the traditional manufacturing way, that is light speed. It's like a couple of good hard work days or an all-nighter with some Red Bulls, and you can have a model from nothing. You're able to capitalize on these trends and markets. But again, that's not making your own thing. It's tying yourself to, like, other, like, instead of tying yourself to one brand, you're tying yourselves to the fickle winds of fate.
Yeah, and also risking your catalog not being compatible with itself, which is dangerous in my opinion. Like, you get that point where it's like, I think this is super cool, but like, can I do anything with it, with next month's set? And there are definitely people where, I kind of think in the what's it called, like Cyberforge a little bit, but there's another one that I really like. I'm trying to remember their name. Is it Pap Skills? I don't know.
Pap Skills?
Yeah.
That do like the whole lot of the Alien Predator inspired stuff.
There's like Alien, Cyberpunk, and like a couple other things, and it kind of seems to keep like oscillating between the genres of sci-fi, which I think is cool. And if you paint things and tweak things, you can make it all make sense. But occasionally it feels like, okay, these 3 months go with these 3 months, and this month goes with that month, and like, am I gonna collectively, like, I get to the point with those Patreons or tribes that I have to like subscribe and unsubscribe constantly, and I'll tell you what's happening after I have to do that 12 times. I just unsubscribe and I never subscribe again. And this is me, I'm a junkie for this shit, okay? And if I am getting fatigued, if I am getting worn out by the fact that you're oscillating your brand so much, I can only imagine what it's doing to a more casual person, right?
Well, I have to imagine for a lot of them that's playing in that game, they get their core audience that just likes their style, and they're here for here
Right,
forever.
right.
And then it's just a whole lot of churn of like, oh, this audience is just here for heck divers, and they're here for heck divers. You made good heck divers, and then they're gone. And then like it's just complete RNG at that point. You hope that there's a cool looking thing that you can respond to and get models out there for and do good quality stuff and hopefully get some like nice artistic expressions and some really cool takes on it to then build up like some love for your brand and keep some of the percentage of that people. But there's got to be a lot more swing than like the other crew that just like like the other side of things where you've cornered your niche market where you um I'm looking at Last Sword here. You look at the Last Sword miniature, you know what it is. It's like, oh, it's very Old Hammer, but if Old Hammer was made today with like the top quality sculpting,
Right,
or
right.
or like Westphalia, which is what if cartoon but miniature, and it's wonderfully. It looks like an '80s Rankin Bass cartoon, you know, and that's just I love it. I love it. Or Cast and Play, everything, also a cartoon, but like this is like more of a '90s Scooby Doo thing. That particular vibe.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Or the endless Eldritch horrors that you subscribe to.
I know what you're talking about. But I've heard you might be joining their tentacular ranks someday.
Oh no. All right. So is there a way forward? Like this is just like at the end of the day, you got to make money. You've got to like you have to make models. You got to feed yourself, and if you're supporting anybody, you got to feed the people you're supporting. Mm-hmm. And there's a few proven ways to make money in this industry, and people do it. Like there's no shame to any creator that's doing any of these strategies at all. If you're making cool minis and you're doing art and you love it, that's great. Like, and the trends also go in like different directions too. It's like this couple of weeks I've seen so many female Space Marines and Custodes stuff come out due to other controversies in the market,
due to zeitgeist reasons, right?
Yes, there indeed.
Yeah, I definitely have been seeing that as well. And you know, it's interesting too because this is the thing that frustrates me is we have creators out there that like have been doing this all along, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's these people that aren't chasing the zeitgeist that do incredible work who already have this stuff. And so now I'm just kind of like, is the attention going to go back on their back catalog and pull, you know, the fact that there's creators that have had females of all these models for years. And
and I don't know that it does because of how in the now this industry is. That because all the hype is about what's coming. It's a comic book situation. We're talking about what's coming out now or coming out next month, and we're super excited for the new. And the old catalog, I can't imagine moves all that much. I mean, I imagine it moves, but I don't think that like there's a sudden, oh my gosh, we should like right now when the Bretonnia stuff was coming out. A lot of like when Old World was coming out and they were launching with Mummies and Bretonnia. Absolutely, like the people that were currently publishing that stuff got the attention and then their back catalog because it was relevant right then. But I don't know if like a Kingdom of Thermaria, which was like a Kickstarter from a couple of years ago with some of the best, most amazing Bretonnia inspired models I've ever seen. I don't know that anybody cares about that because it wasn't coming out now. There was no active advertising push. How do you find out about that if you weren't around to see it when it came out?
Right. And you know, how do you like link these all up? Because like sometimes you look at this project and if you have it, if you've already printed it or you're aware of it, you think, oh, there's this brand new thing in the new hype zone that perfectly fits with this old thing. And like, you know, that connection and that could really revitalize creators and get them profit on old things like that. It's just it's only a personal thing if you have it. There's not like a networking thing, and I don't know, connective tissue is missing from this industry a lot.
There is one hack that works because we talked about war carsification, but you can just make generic fantasy stuff too and be successful. Like, can I use this in D&D? And the answer, as long as you're being quote unquote generic fantasy, or even like fringe fantasy, because of how vibrant and possible playing in fantasy games is, you can find success there. It's sci-fi creators are in such a hard, like I feel so bad for sci-fi creators at how hard that market is to maneuver, because it is hyper that way. Like, are you doing grimdark? No. Then are you chasing the trend? No. Then do you have some hyper specific fandom and like absolute 100% unique thing that has gotten famous? No. Then you're making no money.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. Or maybe you've hooked up with Traveler and get to do their Kickstarter once every 6 months. Like that's a thing that's been happening. Or you signed a cool license deal like Modifius did. Like that's the other, like, but this is the same thing we talk about with when we were talking about RPGs. Like,
right,
sci-fi RPGs don't succeed. Starfinder has been the first one of those to succeed in 20 freaking years.
And honestly, like, still doesn't feel like it's hitting as hard, even as Pathfinder does. Like,
no,
which is kind of crazy, because on some levels it was like, in my opinion, a sweet spot for mechanics between the two, you know. But
it was my favorite of the Paizo games. But look at, in a vacuum, ignore that Pathfinder exists and look at what got published for Starfinder and compare it to any other RPG on the planet.
That's true.
And it 9 times out of 10 dwarfs them.
Now, do you think that's because there is an overlap between the customer bases, though, and those
absolutely.
And those customers
you market your audience.
Trained.
You take advantage of your let me rephrase that. You leverage your there's lots of terms for this that are not very flattering when we talk about them in the stream, but
sometimes
you rely on your people
flattering.
who have been there for you all along to be there for you in your new endeavors.
That's probably the nicest way you could say that.
But like, yeah, like that's like, this is just, we're just talking about discovery. Like the easiest way to discover something is when something you care about pivots, or when somebody you care about becomes interested in something new. Like we are social creatures, and discoverability is hard. And so that's what we're talking about. You know, audiences moving back and forth. We're just talking about is discoverability at a mass scale.
Yeah. Love of Being says current customers will try your new product. I mean, that's 90% true. Occasionally you do something really nutty and do something completely different, and then your customers are like, what?
Well, just think about it like authors. Brandon Sanderson, if he writes a new Cosmere book, I'm in it. If he writes something else, I'm going to try it.
Probably, but that's Brandon Sanderson. You know, you look at Wizarding person world book person that I don't even want to mention their name, did a mystery book, and even they knew it was probably more a better strategy to release it under a pen name. And they did, and it was so bad that they ended up still revealing who they were just to try to get the book to sell. And it was that whole situation. I mean, you step out your lane. I mean, it's even like, you know, I do streaming, right? When I do streaming, because most of my streaming is Magic the Gathering streaming right now, even though most of my content is Dungeons and Dragons and RPG stuff related, my streaming is mostly Magic the Gathering. And a lot of times my streaming audience, like if I co-stream this to my channels, people don't want to see it. And it's the same sort of thing in these industries. Like when you step out of your lane, you know, I even think like of Titanforge, and you know, I still don't think Cyberforge has the numbers, right? It's that shift over lane thing. I don't know.
Right. I don't know, but like if you just look at their subscriber numbers, you see like the fantasy side is bigger than the sci-fi side,
and that's not just them. It's almost everybody, unless you have somebody who's like super cool and just dumps so many minis on you of both kinds you don't even know. I don't know anybody like that.
Where's Epic at right now? We haven't talked about their models in forever.
Although they actually their sci-fi stuff is separate.
Oh, really?
And it's also, it is not quite the deluge of models that you get for the fantasy side, but it's still a lot.
So do you think there's a path to success? Do you think there's a solution? Is there some, like, do you have the divine secrets to success in 3D printing, Kristen?
I don't know. You know, I think what we probably need is a community-oriented game. And is that OPR? I'm not trying to single you out because you work for them.
Mhm.
Maybe. But I feel like, you keep seeing this urge,
Mhm.
and you look at the OGL for D&D, and
Mhm.
one of the two biggest reasons, 5e is the porridge that Goldilocks ate. It is just complex enough and just simple enough, and it is whatever. But the OGL, when they tried to take that away, the
Ooh.
entire community revolted. And I think that is super telling because people want to be able to play with a core system, right?
Mhm.
And even to the point where even as we're seeing these new editions of D&D get published, their playtests get published, they keep pulling back towards 5e again because they're worried to move away from that centralized zeitgeist rule system.
It's the most
And
successful it's ever been.
right, so it's kind of like, do you mess with that? And I think refining it, is good now and then. But I guess my point is, I think if we had a really miniature agnostic system, and like I said, OPR, there's a couple other games out there that are in that thing, but that was completely free to use, whatever, and really then also didn't just make it so free to use, but featured these small creators.
Mhm.
Maybe there could be a rising tide lifting all the ships sort of situation.
Yeah.
But who's going to do that, right? Because it's a lot of risk, and unless the community catches them.
I mean, it's a lot of risk, all right. I can't talk about this.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I think it's a need, and if somebody, whether or not they can talk about it, is doing it, please, I wish them all the luck. Um, I think this is what has to happen if we want this industry to stay free of larger interests, because eventually what's going to happen, you're seeing these companies like your own, like other people's, that are going to become just big enough that a real big fish is going to come and eat them.
Hmm. Oh, have you
And
seen what's been going on with the Embracer Group situation in Asmodee?
no.
This is because this is relevant because some of the companies that we love are kind of tied up in this.
Mm-hmm.
So Embracer Group, if you do not aware, is this giant mega conglomerate that wanted to gobble up all the entertainment IPs that it could get its hold on. So they were
Mm-hmm.
buying up video game studios. They started buying up
Right.
game studios, movie franchises. I think I might be wrong on this one, but I think they even purchased the rights to the Lord of the Rings at the height of their craziness. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the companies they bought was Asmodee, who is a company that bought up a ton of other board game like
Right.
consolidation. And if antitrust was a thing that was being enforced, none of this would have been allowed because this is a frightening level of consolidation into
Right.
one company. And Asmodee, if you're not aware, is a board game group that publishes a lot of games you might play to 3D print models for, like Star Wars Legion and Shadowprint and Marvel Crisis Protocol, and they own Fantasy Flight and like
Mm-hmm.
humongous, like most of the board games that you love, they are involved in directly, or publish it directly or partner to help get them to market.
Mm-hmm.
Accessories, they distribute Tooth and Coats paints sets. Like they are absolutely a behemoth in the space of the board game and hobby game market. And they got bought by Embracer because Embracer was buying freaking everyone. And all of this was because they were relying on a Saudi investment fund. They were going to get $2.1 billion from this investment fund to do all this.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't go through, it turns out.
Uh-oh.
And now they're on the hook with this mountain of debt because they didn't buy this stuff with cash. They bought this stuff with debt, which is something that happens in the financial world.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not an accountant or a financial expert. I'm just parroting stuff other better news sources have told me about. And so, I'm probably wrong on some of these points, but the end of the day story is, well, that debt needed to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know what happened to Toys R Us, right?
Pretend I don't.
Okay, so it's a common strategy for these financial groups to basically buy a company, throw all the debt on that company, and force that company to own that debt, spin it off into Doom, and let it go bankrupt and take that debt with it.
Right. Right.
So
I know you're talking about there.
So Toys R Us was doing fine financially. It got bought by an investment group who saddled it with all the debt from their bad investments and then spun it off to go into bankruptcy. And so that's Toys R Us didn't die, it was murdered. And Asmodee just got saddled with a whole bunch of debt that it didn't borrow.
Got it.
And what does that mean for our hobby as at large? I'm saying this is a great time to support your indie creators, folk, because soon they might be the only ones you got left.
Yeah, I can see it.
GW is independent. This doesn't affect Hasbro. They're independent. Army Painter's independent, but like a humongous amount of the board game section at your local gaming store is about to become endangered. And we've also found out that they were intentionally withholding reprints. Remember how we've been complaining lately that it's been impossible to get like some Star Wars stuff? They were doing that in order to encourage a buyer. So that like, oh, look, there's this unmet need that you can immediately cash in because there's a whole bunch of people wanting this this product that we have intentionally not published so that there would be an audience waiting for it for you after you buy us. Oh boy. Oh, evidently Dark Horse is a subsidiary as well. Oh my gosh. So like this all comes due this Christmas. So we're about to hit some real rocky shores with Asmodee, and that's going to affect a lot of games that we play. Like there's a worst case scenario, and again, like I am not a financial person, this is not news and stuff, I'm just enjoying having a nerdy chat with my nerdy friend about the possibility space here. But what does the world look like if Fantasy Flight and Asmodee stop existing immediately? Because eventually all these IPs will eventually find homes and then eventually find new game publishers and new things. But the existing games you know and love right now will stop existing for a little while.
Yeah.
And like maybe a publisher will come back and publish that game again, or maybe like what happens with Star Wars, every time the thing change hands, they make an entire new game, and the audience of the old game
is just left
with nothing.
I mean, yeah. This is a phenomenon we see all the time in video games, and I think it's interesting because we're looking at a similar thing with Baldur's Gate 3, with Larian denying that they're ever going to do another one. Baldur's Gate 3 is probably the most successful Dungeons & Dragons thing ever, let alone the physical products. And now suddenly, there's no heir apparent to the game, which is wild.
And to loop this back into 3D printing, the 3D printing community and the independent community might become incredibly important if you love these games, because look at the people who love Mordheim right now. Mordheim is still a popular game. You can find it being played at every convention. You cannot buy Mordheim, and you haven't been able to buy Mordheim for decades.
Well, and Necromunda was in the same boat for a long time too.
Yeah. So, and Hero Quest was in the same boat. Like even at the start of this podcast, remember me talking about me getting involved with that community because I love Hero Quest so much, and it's time to print my own Hero Quest because that's a rite of passage at the time, because you couldn't just go to your local game store and buy a copy of Hero Quest. Old copies were becoming very rare and being beat up and hard to get. So if you wanted to play Hero Quest, a game that was not published, existed in this weird legal loophole that we weren't sure who owned it, so nobody could publish it because of the legal mess involved in that, because it's a Games Workshop thing with Milton Bradley, and currently Hasbro has part of the rights. Who knows how this works? And like it has stuff in it about the old world and chaos and stuff from Games Workshop. How are you going to navigate that? How are any of this stuff going to... It's like why people thought that Ready Player One was a movie that could never be made, because of the amount of references involved in it,
which still got a ton cut from it.
Yeah, absolutely. They had to just replace it with other references left and right. But you had the people 3D printing the models and like providing like PDFs and custom made fan made versions of cards with new art, and and like it became, you have to make this game yourself. You have to, this game is also part craft. And so if there's a world where, and there's a potential future, there's a dark timeline where playing Marvel Crisis Protocol becomes impossible because those models, whatever's out there, stop getting published, and or
Right.
Star Wars Shadowpoint or Star Wars Legion, two very popular games right now. And if those communities want to continue, then they might be forced to, well, we need to start breaking our own rules. We need to start, and we saw this with the old world or the original Warhammer Fantasy too. That's the reason the Ninth Age exists and Warhammer Army Project exists. Like there's so many examples of this where a community is passionate enough to keep this thing alive, even though nobody is making it at a publishing level anymore.
Right.
And then eventually, sometimes these things evolve into new projects, and things like Kings of War happen.
Sure.
And like it becomes its own IP, or 13th Age happens over in the RPG side of things, or Pathfinder freaking happens.
Sure, a revitalization happens, like Heroescape getting popular again. That's a really weird one.
And I'm happy, super happy. But that's where our hobby comes in, because we are able to now facilitate, because before 3D printing, your options were to like handcraft or substitute a proxy from very limited sources,
right,
or to go and find these beloved old artifacts that are constantly being reduced in number, like less and less of them exist every day kind of situation, and the prices just keep getting higher and higher. In a lot of ways, 3D printing will serve a place in the tabletop hobby that emulation serves in the video game hobby, of being able to preserve these experiences that just cannot exist in the current market climate.
Yeah, I've been going back and playing Pokemon Red for the first time on emulator, which probably isn't legal, but
no, emulation's completely legal, assuming that you ripped your own ROM from your own cartridge and you own the game. Well, it's been in court several times.
let's not speculate too much on what or how things ended up in my hands. I don't honestly know. It was mostly given to me. Anywho, we're running out of time, and I have a shout out. I don't know if you have a shout out. But
I have a big shout out. This topic, actually.
Well, go with your big shout out first. Mine's a little.
In a couple of weeks, I've been busting my butt with a bunch of very talented people who are also busting their butt to get a crowdfunding campaign off the ground that will be launching on May the 2nd, which by the time you're hearing this podcast will be out. If you're watching us live, it's being May the 2nd. And if you're listening to the stream, it's a week later and it's out. Called Worlds Beyond, which is OPR, One Page Rules, the company I work for, teaming up with Titan Forge Miniatures and Arc Villain Games to first get rules for their games, for their models in OPR, and bring them into the OPR Creators Program, along with the dozens others people participating in the OPR Compatibility Program, so that there is a nice common wargaming language that independent publishers can publish models for, with rules so that people can play it in an established audience, that we're trying very hard to get actual play spaces working in giant freaking tournaments at UKGE going.
I promise I did not know anything about this when I talked about things earlier, just in case anybody thinks this was a setup. Go on.
And so it's like, this is going to be this gigantic campaign with thousands of models on humongous discounts at the same time that those rules go live. And I can't talk about the specific details on it for reasons, but we've done a lot of previews on the One Page Rules website. There's two big previews, one for Arc Villain Games and Titan Forge, where they show off some of the models that they're doing. And there's pre-signups happening now. And it's going live on the 2nd, and it's a great chance to get some really cool models for very, very low price, and at the same time kind of put a giant spotlight on the OPR Compatibility Program, which is trying to do what the OGL did for RPGs, but for wargaming.
Yay! I like it.
With company that's hopefully got a community big enough to
keep
do
it alive.
this.
I
While
hope
at the
so.
same time, that if you notice the marketing for this campaign, which somebody did,
Somebody.
it's
Who could that be?
constantly spotlighting what the creators are doing, not just trumpeting OPR. It's like,
Good.
look what this cool creator made, and by the way, you can play it in OPR.
Yeah. I dig it.
Mhm.
Mine is much more low key, but
Oh.
I there's pre-signups for a FDM. I know,
Ah,
scary. I'm talking about
FDM.
FDM thing. It's sci-fi also, which kind of ties into this. Sci-fi needs a little help because it's harder for these projects to succeed. This is actually the second grimdark sci-fi terrain project by LRFX.
LFX.
And they're coming out. This is the 7th, also kind of during your same window. It's a much smaller situation, and they need the loves. But this is definitely going to be kind of in your 40K Grimdark Future setup. They have some of the most unique things in this thing, though. There's a battle organ that's like this massive cathedral sonic weapon organ thing, and it's such a cool piece. And there's just the weirdest stuff. It's all supportless, so if you are like me and are FDM challenged and need something you can just put on your plate and make it go, this is going to be one of those projects. And I just think it's just in that kind of little spot where I'm like, I really hope this doesn't go under the radar. They did okay with their first thing, and I think this deserves a really good awareness for the community. So hopefully we can see this fund really hard. I'd like them to do well.
Yeah. Also, it looks like they're offering physical versions if you don't have a printer, or you're like I imagine a lot of our audience where you've got a resin printer but not an FDM printer.
Right.
So good stuff. Good stuff. This one looks
Mhm.
cool. Awesome. All right, everyone. If you want more of Printer Games and some of what we're doing, you can find us over at printergames.com. You can also find us on Spotify, iTunes, and wherever else you can get podcasts, and on YouTube podcasts, which is what is replacing Google Podcasts, evidently, which makes sense. So we are also on YouTube podcasts. And if you want to support the show, the best thing you can do is give us a review on one of those platforms. And if you're watching us on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. All help us reach more broader audiences. So until next time, I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Parham.
I'm Kristen Sowers, also known as Seventh Mastery, and don't forget to use